Have you ever found yourself in that unsettling space where the calls stop, the texts fade, and the endless dance of connection and retreat finally collapses into nothingness? It's a silence that isn't loud or dramatic, just profoundly empty. Two people, both wounded in their own way, protecting themselves, finally stop reaching out. And at first, you might think this silence is the end, the final chapter. But for both you and the dismissive avoidant, it's rarely the end. Instead, it's often the beginning of something deeper, something uncomfortable, and ultimately, something incredibly revealing. Because when two people stop chasing, what's left isn't necessarily peace, it's truth. A raw, unvarnished truth about your connection. When a dismissive avoidant stops contacting you, it's rarely about hatred or indifference. It's usually about control, or rather the illusion of it. They believe that by staying distant, by pulling back, they can avoid vulnerability, avoid rejection, avoid feeling those old, painful wounds they've buried for years. They're creating a safe, emotional distance, a fortress around their heart, convinced it's for their own protection. But here's where the dynamic dramatically shifts. When you stop contacting them too, something in their carefully constructed emotional armor begins to crack. At first, they might feel a sense of relief. Finally, they might think, no more pressure. The emotional demands have ceased and they can breathe. But as the days pass, that initial relief transforms into something else entirely. It morphs into a quiet, persistent curiosity. The silence they once used as a shield, a tool for protection, starts echoing back at them. It becomes an empty space that demands attention. They begin to wonder, why isn't this person chasing me anymore? Why have they stopped trying? This question is a potent disruptor for them. For someone with a dismissive avoidant attachment style, connection has always felt like a battlefield. They crave intimacy, yes, but they fear it intensely. They want love, but they often associate it with being controlled, trapped, or hurt. Their past experiences have taught them that closeness equals pain. So when you used to reach out, when you texted, checked in, tried to keep the bond alive, it paradoxically reinforced their sense of security. They knew you'd always come back. They knew they could retreat, and you would still be there, waiting, proving your devotion. But when you stop contacting them too, the power dynamic shifts dramatically. Suddenly, they're not the one being chased. They're the one left wondering. And that confusion, that gnawing uncertainty, is the precise beginning of their inner conflict. It's the first crack in their carefully maintained facade. You, on the other hand, embark on your own distinct wave of emotions. At first, you feel the profound ache of missing them. The habit of reaching out is still strong. You catch yourself checking your phone, wondering if they'll finally message, wondering if this silence might somehow pull them closer. There's that painful longing, the hope that your quietness will make them realize what they're losing, that it will be the catalyst for their return. But then something profound begins to change after that initial, searing pain starts to fade. A strange, quiet calm begins to take its place. You start realizing how much precious emotional energy you used to pour into trying to maintain something that was never truly mutual, never truly reciprocated. And the silence that once felt like a punishment, a rejection, now begins to feel like a profound act of protection for your own well-being. You begin to reclaim yourself, piece by painful piece. You start to remember who you were before their presence dominated your emotional landscape. But here's where things get truly interesting. The avoidant notices this energetic shift, even without direct contact. It's an almost primal awareness. They may not consciously admit it, they may even deny it, but energetically they sense that you're detaching. That emotional cord they were so used to tugging at for validation suddenly feels weaker, looser, and that subtle energetic shift triggers something deep within them. It triggers fear, the very same fear they've been running from their entire life. The fear of being forgotten, the fear of true abandonment. Avoidants like to believe they don't need anyone, that they are self-sufficient islands. But when the person who once cared, the person who once consistently reached out, finally goes quiet, they start feeling the very abandonment they tried so hard to prevent. At this stage, they might not reach out directly. Their pride and fear of vulnerability are still too strong. Instead, they start testing the waters. They might subtly view your stories on social media, like an old post, send a random, non-committal meme, or show up subtly in your digital world. They're hoping to see if you'll bite, if you'll react, if you're still emotionally invested. Because while they don't want to risk vulnerability, they also don't want to feel replaced, forgotten. It's their indirect, cautious way of asking, are you still there? Do you still care? Is the door still open? Even a tiny crack? But here's the paradox, the frustrating dance. If you respond too quickly, too eagerly, they often retreat again, their fear of engulfment reigniting. If you stay detached, if you maintain your silence, they start spiraling in confusion, their carefully constructed world of emotional control being challenged. This is the emotional tug-of-war that truly begins once you both stop contacting each other. It's a silent battle of wills and fears. Time, however, becomes the great revealer. After weeks or even months of no contact, both of you begin to see yourselves with more profound clarity. You begin to see how much you were driven by emotional need, the need to fix, to prove your worth, to earn love from someone who was never truly open or available. The avoidant, meanwhile, begins to feel the immense weight of their own defenses. The quiet forces them to sit with the feelings they've long avoided. Loneliness, regret, and the dawning, uncomfortable realization that true love requires vulnerability, something they've been running from their entire life. For some avoidants, this silence becomes unbearable. They may start reminiscing about the connection, idealizing it, remembering the warmth you gave them, the emotional safety they didn't know they needed. But pride, that stubborn barrier, often keeps them frozen. They'll convince themselves they're fine, that they've moved on, that they don't need anyone. Yet late at night, when the world is still and their defenses are down, their mind drifts to you. They replay moments, your laugh, your kindness, your patience, and they feel a strange, unfamiliar ache they can't quite label. That ache is recognition, not just of you, but of what they lost through their fear, through their avoidance. Meanwhile, you continue to grow. You start realizing that silence doesn't have to mean loss. It can mean freedom. It can be a powerful space for self-discovery. You stop obsessing about their next move and start focusing on your own healing, your boundaries, your emotional peace. You become your own priority. You realize you don't need closure from them because silence in itself is a form of closure. It's their way of showing you what they are truly capable of giving and what they aren't. And in that profound realization, something powerful happens. You stop craving their attention, their validation, and you start valuing your own energy, your own worth. Months down the line, when both of you have been silent for what feels like an eternity, something shifts again. The avoidant may reappear, sometimes subtly with a casual, "Hey, how have you been?" text, sometimes with a random comment on social media, or even a full-blown confession masked under casual words. But it's never truly about small talk. It's always about testing if the door is still open, if there's a chance to re-establish the connection they secretly miss. Because deep down, even avoidants crave emotional safety. They just don't know how to create it, how to sustain it, without their usual defense mechanisms. When they sense you've genuinely moved on, when your energy radiates self-sufficiency, it stirs their deepest insecurity, that they pushed away someone who truly saw them. If you respond from your healed space, you'll notice something different. Their charm may still exist, but it no longer hooks you the same way. Their distance no longer feels mysterious. It feels predictable. You see their patterns clearly now, and you understand that true, healthy love cannot bloom where fear still rules. You see them, but you no longer need them to complete you. And that's the moment you truly gain power. Not by ignoring them out of spite, but by understanding them without needing to fix them, without needing them to change for your peace. Because the truth is, healing doesn't always mean reunion. Sometimes it means recognition, seeing the pattern for what it was, and choosing peace over continued pain. And here's the twist most people don't expect. When you finally stop reaching out, not as a tactic, but as a natural act of self-respect, that's when the avoidant feels your absence most deeply. Your silence becomes louder than any message you could send, because it's no longer about punishing them. It's about finally breaking free, about choosing yourself. And nothing disturbs an avoidant more than realizing the person who once chased them is now completely emotionally indifferent. Not angry, not sad, just free. In some cases, this profound silence becomes the mirror that finally wakes the avoidant up. They start confronting their own attachment wounds, questioning why intimacy feels like suffocation, It doesn't happen overnight, but sometimes your absence, your quiet strength, becomes the spark that begins their own arduous journey toward healing and self-awareness. For others, however, they double down on avoidance, diving into work, distractions, or even new relationships to avoid feeling the void you left. But that emptiness always catches up because no distraction, no new person can truly fill the silence left by unresolved emotional truth. So when you both stop contacting each other, what really happens next isn't just about who breaks the silence first, it's about who grows through it. For you, it's the awakening of your self-worth, the reclamation of your energy. For them, it's the confrontation of their deepest fears. Sometimes the silence brings reconciliation, but only when both have evolved, when both are ready to meet each other on new, healthier ground. Other times it becomes a sacred ending, a quiet closing chapter that finally frees you both to pursue the love you truly deserve. And if you ever wonder whether they think of you, the answer is undoubtedly yes. But the more important question is, do you think of you? Because the moment you stop obsessing over their absence and start filling your own life with presence, with joy, with self-love, you win. The silence between you becomes not a graveyard of lost love, but the birthplace of your emotional freedom. Embrace your journey. So, if you're in that quiet space right now, wondering what happens next, remember this. Silence doesn't destroy connections. It reveals which ones were strong enough to survive without chasing and which ones needed to end for your growth.